Gareth drove down the winding country road, the old family farm coming into view as the sun dipped below the horizon. The place had barely changed in the years he had been away. The peeling white paint on the farmhouse, the sagging barn, and the overgrown fields were all too familiar, a snapshot of a childhood he'd tried to forget. Now, after his father's sudden passing, he had no choice but to return. As he parked in the gravel driveway, Gareth hesitated, his hands gripping the steering wheel. Inside that house was his mother, a woman he had long resented. She'd been a harsh and unyielding presence in his life, and the thought of facing her again filled him with a mixture of dread and anger. But there were obligations to meet, and family, no matter how fractured, was family. The funeral had brought relatives Gareth barely knew. His mother's siblings had arrived, their presence a stark reminder of the stories he'd overheard as a child. Stories of beatings, drunken rages, and a household filled with fear. His mother, Evelyn, had grown up in that chaos, and though she rarely spoke of it, Gareth knew it had shaped her. Over the next few days, as the family gathered to grieve, fragments of Evelyn's past emerged in hushed conversations. Her eldest brother, an aging man with a weathered face, spoke of the nights they'd huddled together for safety, the sound of their father's drunken footsteps echoing through the house. Her sister recounted how Evelyn had taken the brunt of their parents' rage, shielding the younger siblings whenever she could. "She's been broken for a long time," the sister said one evening, her voice tinged with sadness. "Your father. He tried. Lord knows he tried to help her heal. But some wounds run too deep." Hearing these stories unsettled Gareth. He'd always blamed his mother for her coldness, her sharp words, and the way she seemed incapable of showing affection. He'd blamed his father too, for standing by in silence, for not protecting him. But now, he began to see another layer to the life they'd built together. His father hadn't been silent, he'd been steadfast. He'd chosen to stay, to try and mend what was broken. One evening, Gareth found himself alone with his mother in the dimly lit kitchen. Evelyn sat at the table, her hands clasped around a steaming cup of tea. She looked smaller than he remembered, her once fierce demeanor tempered by age and grief. "I know you hate me," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. Gareth started to protest, but she held up a hand. "It's all right," she continued. "You've got every right to. I wasn't a good mother. I was too hurt to be what you needed. And for that, I'm sorry." Her words hit Gareth like a blow. He'd waited his entire life to hear an apology, but now that it was here, it felt hollow, insufficient. Yet, it was something, a crack in the wall she'd built around herself. "You've been through a lot," Gareth said after a long silence. "I didn't understand before. I don't think I wanted to. But I see it now. I see you." Evelyn's eyes filled with tears, and for the first time, Gareth saw her not as the tyrant of his childhood but as a deeply flawed, deeply wounded human being. She had tried, in her own broken way, to do what she thought was right. And though her best had often fallen short, it was all she had to give. In the days that followed, Gareth made an effort to bridge the gap between them. He listened as Evelyn spoke of her childhood, her marriage, and the guilt she carried for the way she'd treated him. It wasn't easy, decades of resentment didn't dissolve overnight, but it was a start. Before Gareth left the farm, Evelyn pulled him aside. Her frail hands gripped his tightly, her eyes searching his. "You've got to let go of the anger," she said. "It'll eat you alive if you don't. I can't undo the past, Gareth. I wish I could, but I can't. All I can tell you is that I tried. My best wasn't good enough, but it was all I had. You've got to find your own way now." Gareth nodded, tears threatening to spill over. "I'll try," he said. As he drove away from the farm, Gareth felt a weight lifting from his shoulders. He wasn't sure if he could ever fully forgive his mother, but he could try. And in trying, he could begin to heal. Evelyn had given him that much, a chance to stand on his own 2 feet and move forward. Sometimes, Gareth realized, that was all a parent could do.